I'm talking about David Coe, the CEO of Calm, the leading app for meditation and mindfulness.
David has now written a book about self-care called Recharge, boosting your mental battery one conversation at a time.
I'm David Coe, CEO of Calm, son of Korean immigrants, a proud father, and author of the #1 best-selling book, Recharge. Recharge is where leaders and changemakers share the tools, habits, and mindsets they rely on to stay grounded, energized, and effective. Let's recognize, reflect, and recharge together. Our conversation today is with one of the funniest humans on the planet. She is a fearless voice in entertainment, an advocate, a champion for self-discovery. Her latest book, I'll Have What She's Having, is her 7th New York Times bestseller. Let's recharge with Chelsea Handler. Hi, Chelsea. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good, good. I got to tell you, when I told my wife that we were going to have this conversation today, she wanted to get a whole bunch of her friends and grab some champagne and come on over. And then I told her, "Oh, we're not doing it in person." And then but what was crazy was my daughter, who's 17, and my 14-year-old also wanted to come. That, I got to tell you, never happens. And so it's just amazing that you just have this appeal to everybody. And I just wanted you to know that.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate hearing that. That makes my heart sing.
It's just as crazy. I never have that with my own kids where they're just like, they want to come to something. And when I asked them, I was like, "Well, why do you want to come?" They were like, "She's so cool on social media." And my wife and I are like, more like, "Oh yeah, from the book." But for them, they were all about your social. So whatever you're doing there, keep doing it, because it's just resonating across all demographics and basically all genders.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Thank you.
And congrats on your 7th book. How amazing is that? That just must feel just like, as you just keep pumping these out. What I loved about this last one was the dedication and what you did for flight attendants. Can you just kind of talk to us about why you did the dedication the way you did it?
Well, I spend a lot of time on planes and I spend a lot of time with flight attendants, and I've witnessed a lot of really bad behavior from passengers directed towards flight attendants, and I cannot believe it. Like, I can't believe the way people think that because it's like treating your server, your server like that. And what they're doing is even harder than what servers are doing
Right.
because they're stuck in a tube of, air with us.
But I just want to go back on and because you've traveled to so many different places all around the world. Was there a place where you traveled that really spoke to you and said, "This is my place"?
Yeah, Bora Bora for starters. That's my place. I would like to go live there forever. I mean, I cried the day I left Bora Bora. I was with my girlfriend. We were there for 7 days, and on the day we left, I cried. I was like, "We have to stay. We have to stay." And she's like, "We can't stay at the Four Seasons forever." I'm like, "We have to." I'm like, "This is the most beautiful place I've ever been." I'm like, "I've never felt more at home." But yes, all my travels, I've been lucky enough to be able to see so much of the world, not all of it. Africa would probably be my top place to, like, spend the most
Mm,
time. I love
mm,
Africa.
love
I
that.
love being on safari. I love
Yeah.
that culture. Those people are so happy and beautiful and smiley and infectious, and they're simple. Their lives are so simple. So it's so true what you hear about the simplicity bringing, innate joyfulness. But yeah, the reason why I dedicated the book to flight attendants is just because I had seen so many gross things happen,
Mm,
and they're defenseless. They're not trained to deal with people who refuse to wear masks or who are obstinate or disobedient and don't want to follow the rules. They're
mm,
not the ones making the rules. So
right.
I've seen it so many times on planes, and I'm always there to help and assist. Like, if I'm on a plane and someone's acting like a jackass, I will say something. I can promise you that. I will back you up, and I've
I
done
love
it,
that.
and I'll continue to do it.
I love that. It's, your kindness. It's all about kindness, and so that's great. And karma. Um, I want to switch the conversation to your professional and life and career evolution. And when I was going through the book, one thing that just struck me at is that your business instincts kicked in at such an early age. and the part was really about when you were, selling lemonade as a kid. I mean, that's one thing to sell lemonade as a kid. I think it's another to have, like, that understanding of, like, "Okay, I'm gonna stick some alcohol in there." But then you actually understood something that I would tell you most adults don't, which is, like, your margins. And so, like, when do you think that where do you think that mindset came from? I mean, I read that passage twice, and I was like, "Where did this come from?"
Yeah, I think I was born and I was pissed. I was pissed at the financial situation that my parents found them that I found myself in. I was pissed that there were already 5 other children. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, "Wait, what, who are these people?" And to find out I was the youngest of 6 children, I remember being a baby and wondering what the plan was financially. Just I remember always feeling financially insecure because they had so many
Mm,
children and my parents were very disorganized and they were very tired. So, there was a lot of neglect and a lot of self-sufficiency, like, I was on my own and I was unsupervised. My brothers and sisters stepped in and acted as parents, but they were teenagers too,
wow.
um, so I was unsupervised and I was left to my own devices, and when you're the youngest of 6, you kind of grow up quickly. You
Yeah.
absorb everything around you, and I realized in order to make a way for myself that I was gonna have to start getting creative. I was like, "I can't wait till I'm 18 to get a job." I'm like, "I'm gonna have to start making money immediately." So I was like, "Okay, first I did the lemonade stand. When that didn't yield enough profit, I was like, "Okay, let's turn this into a hard lemonade stand." And when then after that, I was like, I got bored with that. I'm like, I could be making even more money than this. I'm like, look at my acumen. And then I became a babysitter. I would babysat. I was 10 years old and lied and said I was 15 and babysat for a 14-year-old boy all summer. I mean, and then my babysitting empire was really the one that got me. I made thousands of dollars between the ages of 10 and 15 years old, thousands of dollars because I had tons of clients. And then I started hiring people and I would pay them less than the full price that I got. So I was like, I was really running a business. And I think my motivation was independence and freedom.
Ah, that is so amazing. I tried to run businesses when I was younger too, but shoveling snow when you're 10, you don't really get very far. And so I didn't have that business instinct that you had, which is just incredible. When you were staying on when you were younger, how did a young Chelsea envision her adult life? And what is that in terms of the kind of reality versus what your expectations were?
How did I envision adult life? My book opens up with me talking about the woman that I wanted to become. And it's
Yeah.
a chapter basically called Little Girl, where I put down in writing the type of woman that I wanted to be, which was loud and brave and somebody who would stand up for other people, somebody who was independent, that never had to rely on anybody financially.
Yeah.
Um, and I really just wanted to fly, you know what I mean? I just wanted to fly free. I wanted to get away from my family because I knew I could do it better. I was like, "This isn't working, this kind of operation. I am gonna be once I get my own life and I'm responsible, like, I will have an income, I will have a housekeeper, I will have a staff. I'm gonna have people helping me so that I can be creative." I didn't know what that creativity would be or look like, but I believed in myself from a very young age, and I also had this teacher named Mrs. Schekman
Huh.
who told me she was my 3rd grade teacher, and she told me almost every single day, "You're gonna be something special. You're gonna be someone special." And to me, that is the best gift you can give any child, who is feeling neglected or is feeling unseen, is to really show up and let them know that the world is full of possibilities and that you can achieve almost anything you want if you really get after it. And she instilled in me the confidence in myself to believe that I could do something and that I was different. And not to say that I'm better or worse than anyone, just that I had something to offer in a public way. And I didn't know what that looked like. I'm like, oh, am I going to be an actress? Am I going to be a
Mm.
model? Like, what does that mean? And now I know, oh, every path and every door that opened was because I'm supposed to be doing exactly what I'm doing right now, which is a, I've had a hugely public career, a public evolution. I've had ups and downs, and I've shared all of them with everybody. So
Huh.
when people look to me or are fans of mine, it's because of my authenticity and because of my honesty. And that's a commodity that I don't ever take for granted. I always make sure I put the truth first so that people know when they're listening to me, this is a true story. This is not a, like I'm not pretending to be anything that I'm not. And in fact, I'm trying to encourage everyone to just be as unapologetic as I am about finding out who you really are and what does that mean, and then getting really good at being who you are. Not just finding out your truth, but also then fine tuning yourself and refining yourself over and over and keep ascending to the next level of what's possible for you and how many people can you impact? What is the ripple effect that you can have? Um, and that's really what I wanted to do with this book and my new stand-up special. They're both kind of there it's like a coupling, they're both
Yeah.
there to provide joy. I want to provide joy and laughter, and I also want to inspire.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, there's so much to unpack in what you just said and so much words of wisdom. I mean, first off, like we all need a Mrs. Schekman, and it just shows you the importance of teachers in terms of like young children and the impact that they can have, especially when they're so positive and they tell you you can do things. I know as a child myself, I had so much insecurity at times of whether or not I'd be good enough or if I could do this. This actually led to me at times just having panic attacks as a child because I never felt I was good enough at times and I would stress myself out. But then there was always that person in your corner that'd be like, "You're going to be just fine." And when people talk about it, it's often a teacher, whether it was like your physics, your gym, whoever it may be, it was somebody there on your side. And I just wanted to say that's just so amazing. And thank you, Mrs. Checkman, for you.
Yeah, right. Totally. I couldn't agree more. I feel that way about children in my life too. I mean, when I see a kid that feels neglected or any kid, I want to always give them the attention and give them like, yeah, to hear them and to be with them and to be really present with children, I think is one of the most important things that you can do as an adult, whether it's your own children or other people's children.
I got to I got to tell you just going on something you said earlier. When I was reading your book, there was something that really stuck out to myself. And that was in addition to your authenticity, your honesty, was really this thing around you being a CEO. Because so much of CEOs that I've met, great CEOs, they're great storytellers. So people can really see themselves a part of that journey. People can really see themselves wanting to be a part of that journey. People really feel part of that story. Do you feel that's been a secret also to your success, is that your ability to tell stories both personally and professionally?
Yeah, it's a facet of my success. I don't it's funny that you say that CEO. I mean, I'm sure I'm the CEO of my family for sure, my brothers and
Yeah.
sisters. I'm in charge. I make the decisions. Even though that I'm the youngest, I always told them it was going to be this way. I'm like, listen, I'm going to be in charge. So if you want to come with me and I'll show you the way. And but yeah, I'm a leader for sure. I'm a leader. The term CEO has such a corporate, bent to me that it's hard to think of it in that way. But I'm definitely somebody who, if there's a situation and there's five of us and we're stuck somewhere, I'm probably going to be the one that's going to be like, okay, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Unless I see someone smarter around, then I'll always defer to someone who's better at something than I am. But I will take the bull by the horns always in a situation, and I'm not scared to be assertive or, insert myself into a situation.
Yeah, and, just talking about you being kind of, a leader, with all leaders, we have things that kinda go up and to the right, and we also have things that make us better, and whether there's certain setbacks that make us better, and you wrote about one that really resonated again with myself around Montreal. And can you just talk a little bit about the Montreal Comedy Festival and what you went through and how you navigated that moment?
Yes, absolutely. So I was performing at the Montreal Comedy Festival for the very first time. I was in my late 20s. I may have been 27 or 28. And I really was supposed to be the girl, like the it girl, the new girl on the scene, the new comic, like pretty funny, blah, blah, blah. And my manager had arranged this showcase with all of the industry that was at Montreal. And Montreal at that time was the place to be if you were a comedian. If you got into the Montreal Comedy Festival, you were on your way to like stardom and success.
Wow.
So I had the showcase in front of about 100 executives. I bombed so badly. I didn't have enough experience at that time to grab it and to reclaim that set. I
Mhm.
just sped through it. As soon as I was off, because I let my nerves get a hold of me, and as
Yeah.
soon as it was off and I didn't hear the laughter, I just sped through it and went talked so quickly that you couldn't hear anything I said. And then I got off stage and it was as bad as I thought. The crowd
Ah,
dispersed. My manager was like, "Wow. Yeah, I don't know what to," I'm like, "I don't know what happened." He's like, "This is a really tough room." All the excuses people make when something doesn't
sure.
go. And then Zach Galifianakis walked me back to my hotel room and told me that nobody would be able to help me with my feelings except for me. And I sat there and I cried like my life had ended before it had even began. I just sat there and cried and cried and cried. And I didn't call my family, which was unusual. I would always call them after a big deal like that. And I had a show the next night, but no one came to that show. So 3 days later, I was in LA, back in LA, and Grace Wu, who was an executive at NBC,
Mm.
called my manager and said, "I heard she bombed at the Montreal Comedy Festival. I would like to see the set. I hadn't seen it. I wasn't there. Can she do another set at Luna Park this Tuesday?"
Wow.
And I went and did the same exact show, but at this point, you had nothing to lose. I was confident. I was great. I crushed it the way I had done this set, uh, probably 200 times, just nailed it. And I got my first development deal the next morning, from
Wow.
NBC, where they paid me something like $100,000 to develop a TV show around me. And I shared that story because that was how quickly my world needed to change. Like, that's how quickly everything changed. 72 hours was the time it took for the worst night of my life to turn into the best day of my life. That's how much room was in between those 2 experiences. So I share that story as a reminder to everybody that you never know what is coming around your corner. There is always rainbow coming, and you have to be ready to grab it when you see it. And so you can't sit in your pity party for too long. You
Sure.
have to be ready to reclaim it and then try again. And every failure is just one step closer to your success. And that's how I look at anything that doesn't go the way I want it now. It's like, well, that's okay. The next thing, now I know I have this information. And for people who are starting out, whether or not you're in my business
Mhm.
or a different one, it is so important to embrace your failures as much as you embrace your successes, because it's not about the failure. It's about picking yourself back up and really instilling in yourself that you have the confidence to do this again and do it the right way.
I love
Um,
that.
yeah. So that was a meaningful turn of events for me.
Yeah, I mean, what you just said there, every step, one step closer to success, every failure. That's amazing. I had one as well, which I haven't talked about publicly, but a lot of my employees know, where I was at one of my startups and we were out of money. We had one more payroll left. And I kinda, while it didn't all happen within 72 hours, this was within one payroll period, I knew that 50 people, all I had was enough money for one more payroll. And if you didn't figure it out, the company was going away. And I actually thought it was going away. So I actually did wallow for a little longer than 72 hours, but we figured it out and we became quite successful. And it's just one of those moments I often tell people, and it was more internal than external now, which is you can't wallow in it, like you said, and you just gotta do the best you can, and if it didn't work, we would be off to the next one, and we would hopefully be better off because 'cause we've learned from our past mistakes. But, I love what you said there.
Yeah.
I I wanted to ask you just about, um, you know, you seem so fearless on stage, always so in control. Is there anything that makes you nervous or insecure?
Yes, I'm trying to think of what they are. I mean, insecure, no, I don't feel insecure. I'm secure with who I am. I've worked very hard to get this way. I had a lot of false security, when I was growing up or coming up in my 20s and 30s. It was kind of more of like confidence, like brazen, balls and confidence, but that's not real confidence. That's just kind of like a fuck you, I don't care attitude. Like I'm, I'm going to be this way. But as you grow up and refine yourself, you go to therapy, you learn about meditation, you learn how to spend time alone, you learn how to be more introspective. You become like a fine wine. You just keep getting
Yeah.
better at being you. And then you kind of cultivate this innate security with whatever you do. And I think half of the battle of not being insecure and not getting scared is to not take it so seriously. It's okay to be scared and it's okay to be insecure, but you don't have to hide those things, you know? You can be like, I'm so scared to do this. Like if sometimes if I'm skiing something that's really steep or scary, or I'm heli skiing, that's really scary with avalanches and all that stuff. Like I'll say, I'm so scared, I'm so scared. And my friends will be like, okay, we'll do it this way, this way. But I'm not insecure. I'm just feeling like that adrenaline. And I know the way through fear is to step towards it. And
That's
so
right.
if anything scares me, I know to go move toward it. I don't shirk away from anything challenging. I'm always ready to challenge myself and to get to the next. Like I always think we're climbing a staircase and I'm trying to get to that top. I want to get as high as possible.
Love that. I wrote that down as well. Staircase. That's so great. I'd love to shift the conversation now to mental health, meditation, and therapy. As you know, it's Mental Health Awareness Month, and I love how your book does such an important job of just normalizing conversations around mental health. I also wrote a book. It's called Recharge, about trying to take a heavy topic and equate it to a phone battery to make it lighter, so more of us could have a conversation around it. And uh, one of the things, that you spoke about was when you were having a panic attack during your, Netflix special. And can you just kinda walk us through that and what was happening and how you overcame that?
Well, it wasn't during my Netflix special, but it was around the time I started doing my Netflix show. I
Got it.
was speaking at this early morning conference for women, and I got up on stage. It was like 9 o'clock in the morning, and my legs started to violently shake. Like first, it was just shaking, and then that kind of thing just gets more and more exasperated the more attention you put on it. A lot like meditation, but in the opposite direction.
Right.
And then it started happening. I was just beginning my Netflix talk show, which was a 2-year stint. And it started happening when I would do the monologue. I was like starting to get this like shaky, nervous thing when I would stand in front of people, which didn't really dovetail nicely with my career of standing up and speaking publicly, which is what I do for a living. Um, so I I got off that stage and was like, something's not right. I wasn't myself. I wasn't grounded. I was all over the place. I was just very flighty. And I used the term just like a leaf. Instead of being the tree, I was a leaf on a tree that could change color, that could fall off, it just no stability. And I felt that period of time was in my 40s. I started to feel it when I turned 40. I think that's why they call it, excuse me, a midlife crisis, because what had worked for me my whole life stopped working for me. What
Sure.
my drive, my ambition, my I can do anything attitude started to shatter and crumble. And when I went to therapy, which is what I started to do at 40, I went into deep therapy for 2 years with this guy named Dan Siegel, who my previous book was about, but I mention him in this book as
Yep.
well. He really unpacked everything and all my trauma from childhood. My brother died when I was 9. I had never expressed my grief about that. I never had room to. I never had a psychiatrist. I never spoke to anyone about it. If you mentioned my brother dying to me, I would be like, "Oh, it's not your fault. You didn't kill him." Like, I couldn't have a real conversation about it. I would never be vulnerable to a man, to anything about but if something happened to someone else, then I would be emotional. Like, I had license for to be empathetic to other people, but I couldn't show myself the same, kind of consideration. And so what I learned through my 2 years with Dan Siegel, which was brutal and hard and unbecoming, was he cracked me open. He worked me in such a way, like I needed like a linear therapy to kind of trick me into real therapy. I wanted to talk about the science of the brain and this area of the brain and the amygdala and with the prefrontal cortex and what does this do? And then slowly but surely, he pulled it out of me. You know, the first session, he said, "Do you want to, tell me about your childhood?" I'm like, "This is not about my childhood. This has nothing to do about my childhood. My brother died. My dad died.
Right.
Everyone's dead. Like, just there's nothing to talk about there." And obviously, there is stuff to talk about. So anyone who thinks that they're not traumatized in some way, you have been. It's impossible to go through life without that. So he
100%.
really helped me ascertain the way in which I behaved and the way and why I did, and my reactions to men, my inability to be in really intimate relationships with men because I had been deserted by them in my little childlike brain. My brother dying was a desertion. My father being so angry about my brother's death was a desertion. It was like they abandoned me, and they didn't abandon me. You know, nobody chose to die, and my father didn't choose to not have the tools to deal with my brother's death, and he didn't choose for my brother to die. So to kind of summarize the whole experience, it gave me a new language and a new understanding of myself and a pathway to become more patient, more considerate of others, not to be the center of the life of the party everywhere I went. Like, that was not my responsibility, even though I felt like that was my most valuable asset. It was explained to me, like, how much more value I have and in other ways and all of the contributions I can make. And it was, like I said, very unpleasant to learn all of these things about yourself and to think of all of the people that you've hurt or offended or, spoke out of turn, like the lives, eh, you know, but also getting to the other side of that and giving yourself grace and forgiveness and knowing that, okay, any wrong you've done can be corrected and you can circle around that situation again or that person again and show them the newer, better version of yourself, and
Yeah.
demonstrate that you've grown. And it was, it wasn't just the 2 years that I went to therapy. It was the year after where you absorb everything you've learned in therapy,
Mhm.
and then another year after that, applying everything I learned in therapy, trying to become this like newer version of myself while grabbing the old parts of my personality that were great, but getting rid of the stuff that wasn't great. And you're like, okay, it's very confusing because you're like, well, who am I? Who am I really? So I kept auditioning like these new versions of myself, trying to understand who am I? Um, and and now I do understand. And I mean, that was about 8 years ago when I got out of therapy. I would say 40 to 45 were probably the most difficult years of my adulthood. And then I started to really lean into who I am and my work ethic and my hustle and my value. And I was lucky enough to have enough people in my life that reminded me of my value at a time where so that was like the most insecure time of my life. So whereas a lot of people experience that in their 30s or 20s, I experienced that insecurity and self-consciousness in my 40s.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that because for folks that who haven't gone through therapy, there's an intensity to that, and then you went all in on that for a period of time. Um, is there ways today that you keep up your mental well-being? How do you keep up your mental well-being today with your schedule and everything that's happening around you? Are there techniques you use today that you would recommend for others?
I'm very into sleeping. I sleep a lot. I don't I can't operate. I mean, right now I'm on, I think, day 18 of a press tour for my book, for my special. I've been promoting these things. I've been at South by Southwest. So I'm definitely feel depleted. But like last night, for instance, I came home. I'm staying with this family. They're like, we're having family dinner at 7. I'm like, I'll be in my room. I won't be having dinner. I'm gonna just go take an edible, lie in bed, watch mindless TV, and refuel because I have
Yeah.
another day today. And I meditate. I don't meditate as religiously as I did for a while. I used to do it every day, regardless of anything. Now I do it about 3, 4 times a week. But I'm also very clear about I don't let things get under my skin the way they used to. I don't I'm much better at letting things go and letting the universe drum up what's supposed to happen and not trying to control the outcome of everything. And I think that is one of the best pieces of advice that I'd ever been given. And I read it in many self-help books, but really just stop, not to resist reality. Like if something doesn't go your way, okay, then deal with that. Don't fight
Yeah.
all the time. Just kind of to get into a flow state, you have to be accepting of whatever is coming your way. And while some of it may not be fun, it's better and more graceful to just go through it than to resist it.
That's right. I love what you said about sleep because we've had hundreds of millions of people download Calm, and more than half of those people use it for sleep. And you sometimes forget about the importance of sleep in our hectic schedules and what impact just getting a good night's sleep can help. That could help to reset you. So I love that you said that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I did that too 2 nights ago. I was binge watching a little bit and I was like, "I just got to reset in my own way." And I just went to the room and there's pandemonium happening downstairs with my 2 dogs, and my kids were like talking about some exam they're about to take, and that like started to make me feel anxiety. And so I just went upstairs. I'm like, "I'm going to shut the door and I'm just going to binge watch a little TV and I'm going to go to bed early." And I woke up the next day feeling great. And I think everything was fine. And so I just needed to get away a little bit. But you've also talked about meditation. And I was just curious because meditation can take so many different forms. How do you meditate?
I usually use an app. I'll use Calm or I use Chopra. Um, and I like a guided meditation. That's my best kind of meditation. 20 minutes, guided. But I do use it to fall asleep a lot. I use the Calm app a lot to fall asleep
Ah,
too.
love
I
that.
like the sound of the waves and I like that background sound with someone. I love guided meditation. I love when there's an intention to think about, you know, about how you want to. I love courses where there's like a 10, 10 session about, rebirth and renewal or letting go or,
Mm.
deactivating your stress levels and just kind of reminding you to be present. I think the best gift that meditation has given me is the gift of being present. And that also comes with age, but it's such an important key ingredient to joyfulness, and the unadulterated blissful moments you can experience are always when you are in the present moment. So, uh presence is not I don't think that's something that you can really I didn't really experience. I mean, I've experienced it, but when I was younger, but it wasn't a practice. I wasn't practicing being present. And now in my life, that is a practice, whether I'm on stage or whether I'm talking to a fan or whether I'm at a book event, I'm present. I'm there to be with you. So that is the biggest lesson I think also that I've learned and the gifts that yields.
I I so love you said that. I actually in the book I have, I interviewed John Scully, who was the former CEO of Apple. And I said, "What's one thing that you would recommend for everyone, or what's one thing that you kind of, a piece of advice?" And he said, "I on my business card didn't put CEO, I put chief listening officer. And I wanted people to know that I would be there and listen to you when you spoke. I wanted to be fully present." And I think it's something that gets kind of lost in today's day and age. I too was not very good at that when I was younger, but as I got older, I just realized how much it means to both people when you're just present and you're there for them and you're very intentional with your words. And also how you may text someone. You've also talked about that as well, just being present in the moment.
I read somewhere like if you're walking down the street and you're on your phone, you're doing two things poorly.
That's that's so true. You can run into a lamppost. Yes. I um I wanted to move the conversation to a little bit more on your book, and I want to come back to a section in particular that uh, just you've written so many books now. And for me, as a first time author, and I look at you as a 7-time New York Times bestseller, just with such awe. I you're What made writing this book so different from the others?
Um, this is just I'm in a different place in my life, and anyone who reads this book will know.
Yes,
It started
it's
with
true.
my therapy journey, the
Mhm.
last book, which was
Yeah.
Life Will Be the Death of Me. And then this book started. actually, when I was dating Joe Coy, this editor reached out and was like, "Oh, do you want to write a book about falling in love because it's so public?" And we were having such a public relationship, and everyone was so happy for us. And I had never been in that kind of so like public facing relationship where so many people were rooting for us, and that we were just kind of emitting joyfulness, and it was infectious to everybody. And I thought, yeah, I definitely do want to write a book about falling in love. And then we broke up, and I was like, oh, whoopsie doodle, like, and then I just said, you know what, let's put a pin in this and see if I have anything to say about this in a couple of months. And I wanted to really contemplate and reflect and think, is there anything new I have to say? Do I have anything new to share with the world? And is it a value? And then when I started really thinking about me, who I was as a child and who I am today, I think the essence of who we all are is our child, right? Is our child self. That's before the world besmirches us. We're
Yeah.
unbesmirched, so to speak. We haven't had our hearts broken. We haven't had huge disappointments. We're just children with dreams. And who was I then? And who was my character when I was opening up those lemonade stands and when I was hustling at 8 and 9 years old, when I really didn't even know anything about the world? And did I take that kid with me all the way through to this woman? And I think the idea of reflecting on that for all of us, are we still the person we were when we were born? Is our character and integrity the same? Are we still that? Is it so strong of a character that it stayed with us? And when we fall off the track of who we are, did we get back on it? Are we actively trying to become the best versions of ourselves?
Sure.
And so for me, this book was about sharing those childhood moments where I had no doubt in my mind what I was doing. It was such tunnel vision, and my instincts were front and center. And then taking you through all of the moments in my life where I fell off, where I didn't feel that center and I didn't feel that focus. And what took me to get back on the track, and what it took me to get back in touch with that little girl, to remember that I was on a journey here to become this woman that I wanted to be, and I wanted to find that woman.
Oh, amazing. There was another part of your book that I wasn't going to show you this, but I figured because there's the clean version back here, but I do have when I really love a book and I want to go back to it because I reread books and I'll show it to you. I make connotation. You can never get a used book from myself because I've written all over it, and it will show like notes in the book and I'll tag it. And there was one thing in particular I tagged, which was to all my nuggets. And I wanted my kids to read that part as well because it just sat with me, and then I wanted my cousins to read it, my nieces, I just wanted everyone to read it, right? So I was like, "I'm gonna tag this, circle it, I'm gonna highlight it in red, yellow, green, because you better read this section if there's one section." Because to every parent out there, I think you just went, "Yes." To every person who's ever taken care of other kids, you went, "Yes." And it was this part where you were like, "Clean your plates after you eat. Open the dishwasher and put them inside." And I just couldn't stop. I was just like, "Yeah." But, like, because half the time I feel like I still today am putting and doing those dishes for everybody else. And so I was just I love that you put that in there and just was open about it. And when you penned that, how did that whole section come together for you? And I just love to double click on that for a quick sec.
Well, I mean, I didn't ask anyone in my family if I could include that letter, so I'm sure they're thrilled. If they're We'll find out if they read the book too. But I took their names out at least, uh, because nobody could connect those dots. But, no, that was an important letter for me to write because I was part of the problem. I was providing them with these crazy, ridiculous vacations and wanting to spoil everybody and, show them what means to be successful and be able to shower the ones you love. But I went too far and they got too used to it and too comfortable with it. And I was just seeing, signs of disrespect and lack of gratitude, not towards me, towards the experience, the- and just as a family, like the dynamic
Sure.
and not being grateful and not saying hello and goodbye to strangers and acknowledging that people are coming in and out of the house and working there. And, to acknowledge those people and to not be a spoiled little brat. I never had exposure to those kinds of trips when I was growing up. So I wanted to make sure my nieces and nephews knew that, like, there are standards now. These are requirements. These are not an option anymore. These are the requirements that I'm going to need for you to be on vacation with me.
It was so good, and thank you for penning that. There was also the last chapter of your book, and titled "Women," and it almost uh, it reads like a love letter to yourself. And I just wanted to ask, what was it like writing that section of the book?
Very empowering. Very empowering to not worry about what I'm saying about myself to myself on a public way, to to own my to own my power, to own my female empowerment, to own my womanhood, to set an example to all women, to all people, but especially women, especially to little girls, especially to our young people, that you have the power to hold yourself to a higher standard. And when you do, the world comes with you. And to really always check in and make sure that you're at that level that you want to be at. And it I I felt like I've come into my own in a way that is unshakable, that you can't toss me around. No one can. I'm so firmly planted. My feet are so firmly planted in the soil. You might be able to do something to me physically, but my spirit is non-negotiable. And that will always be bright.
Love that. Love that. I have something I always kind of do at the end of these kind of sessions, which I first was going to call it a speed round, but no, there's nothing fast about this, so I'll just call it three big questions for you at the
Okay.
end. And the first one is, you started and said there's everything's out there, and you've been so public and so open and so honest. But is there something that people would still be surprised to learn about you?
I mean, in the book, I think there's this chapter about the children, poopsie whoopsie and oopsie in my life. I think people will be surprised about that, to realize how many children are in my life that are not my nieces and nephews, how many children I kind of take under my wing and make sure that they feel the way that I felt when I had a Mrs. Schekman in my life, my third grade teacher. But no, I mean, I think the thing I've always heard is how intimidating I am, and that makes me laugh so hard because I mean, it doesn't make me laugh so hard, it just always makes me go, "What?" Like, that is the last thing I'm trying to be, is intimidating, and if confidence is intimidating, then that's a bigger problem. You know what I mean? It shouldn't be. I
That's
am
right.
confident and I am strong, but I'm not here to intimidate you, I'm here to inject you with some confidence and some strength.
Ah, that's awesome. Love that. I um I also love the part when you were talking about them, how you ran into, forgot which one in London again.
Poopsie.
Um, Hopesy,
Yeah.
yeah, and it had been a while. That was so cool to read that again.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you.
I so my next one is, besides one of your own books, what's a book that you would recommend for others to read?
I love Letting Go by David Hawkins. I always say
Yeah.
that book because that's just. Have you read that?
No, I'm writing it down now.
That's a beautiful, beautiful, very metaphysical, very deep book, but it works. And that book I've read a few times, probably 4 times. Anytime I'm feeling like I'm losing my footing, or I need a reminder about the power of your energy and what you're putting out. That book is a great reminder of, you attract what you put out. So it is important to constantly put out the good vibes.
Ah, that's so good. I'm definitely gonna pick that up. I when I was thinking about that, I was thinking about Jonathan Haidt for myself in The Anxious Generation,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it just seems so relevant today in terms of where, young adults are today, about them just being more anxious than they've ever been. And so
Right.
I feel that's like a must read for not only young adults today, but for all parents too, and others. Um, I, um, I wanted to, go into one last question here, which is really around, uh, the book I wrote, Recharge, where, um, I I recharge by talking to other people. I found that, like, I can't just go by myself for long stretches of time. I love being around other people. I love having these types of conversations. I got to tell you right now, like I equate my mental health to a phone battery, and by spending time and hearing and listening to you, I feel like I'm at 100% plus because it's just been the most incredible conversation. How does how does Chelsea recharge? What like, are there things that you look to do day by day? I know outside of meditation and others, but are there little things that you do and say, "Yep, that helps to recharge my battery." It's a short recharge, or a long recharge. Like what are things that you do that helps you just recharge your own battery?
I mean, when you can be there for someone else in their time of need and take the focus off of yourself, that is a nice recharge. Not someone that depletes you, but someone that just kind of needs a boost, somebody who needs you, even a child. Like, that's helpful to take your mind out of your own stuff. I also love to ski. Skiing is the best recharge I get. And I can't wait to go skiing for 2 weeks at my house in Whistler and just chill and relax. And so skiing is a big recharge, but I think the best way to get out of your own way is to get into someone else's and to get into another's way and to help another person do something. Even if it's a little small thing, I find that that goes a long way.
I love that photo by the way of you skiing where you had both your dogs kind of strapped one in the front and one in the back. And I was like, do you know how coordinated she must be to do that going down the slope? I mean, was it as hard as it looked or was it just
It
effortless
was
for you?
heavy. That was heavy. I had a hard time turning on those skis with those 2 dogs. That was 90 pounds of weight I was carrying. So yes, that was hard. I was dripping sweating in the snow in a bikini. I was sweating.
Well, Chelsea, thank you so much for being on Recharge today. This has just been the most incredible conversation. I also want to just tell everybody, please go out there and go get your copy of Chelsea Handler's latest book. It is absolutely incredible. You don't have to mark it up the same way I did. You can keep it a little bit more pristine, but I will tell you, it is just amazing. And lastly, I'll just tell you that, you have your Netflix special, you have your residency that's also in Las Vegas. I think it's the Chelsea Lounge at the Cosmopolitan
Chelsea,
um,
yeah, the Chelsea Theater at the
Theater.
Cosmopolitan Hotel.
That's amazing. And you can pick up all your tickets on everything on chelseahandler.com, is it? I think I went to that the
Yep,
other day and I was telling my wife, we're getting these. So just go
love
to
it.
chelseahandler.com.
Love it. Thank you so much. What a wonderful conversation.